before keto came around, I was around, and there was this thing called paleo, and they went through the same growing pains that keto did. Paleo, oh, everybody's excited. Oh, everybody go paleo, rah, 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 paleo, paleo. And then people went, a low carb version is not paleo. If you eat starches, that's the right way to do paleo. Oh, if you don't eat starches, that's the right do to. Oh, you got to feed your gut microbiome with resistant starch. It just came this tit for tat pissing match over what the right version was. And we're doing it all over again. We have done it all over again with keto. That's what killed paleo, and it's what's killing keto.
I feel like it's human nature. Everybody wants to be right. And when it comes to health and wellness and fitness, everybody's an expert and everybody knows what they're talking about. And that's why there's so much conflicting advice about all the diets, because it's like, in a way, I'm like, okay, there's one part of me that's like, maybe they're just trying to be helpful. Maybe that's what works for them and they just want to share it. But in another way, maybe they are just literally so close-minded and they don't see the whole picture, or they're just so focused on this one thing that, like anything else, there's those type of people, it doesn't matter what you tell them, they will not believe you. Like, they are just like, no, this is the way it is, and this is the way, and I'm right, and you're wrong.
Although I will say, and I saw this in paleo, and I know it's why it's happening in keto, there are some people that are like, I have to stand out. So what's my niche? Oh, I'm going to add honey to my carnivore diet, and suddenly I'm different than everybody else. Or I'm going to say liver is harmful for you when you eat meat. I'm going to stand out from everyone else. Now, there's specific people that were in those categories. I'm not going to say their names publicly, but you know who you are. And it's okay if you want to say incendiary things, I suppose, to try to get attention. I think it helps to deteriorate the message more than it helps to boost it.
Yeah, so again, I think it comes down to, like, there's so many things, right? There are people like, well, is it their business? Is it a marketing thing? Yeah, like you said, do they want to stand out? Or is it just like they're finding like all these things and they're making it more confusing than it should be, right? You and I both know that keto is pretty simple. Eating a low carb, high fat diet is pretty simple, right? There's no need to complicate it. But of course, you know, there's these companies that come in and make all these products, and then people are like, oh my God, keto is so popular. How do we monetize, right? Yeah. People see dollar signs because there's keto experts out there that literally know nothing about nutrition, know nothing about health, have not even done keto themselves. They're just promoting it because it sells, because right now it's hot. So yeah. We talked about this in my podcast. Is like, as the consumer, we have to be educated. We have to be aware of this. We're the ones that have to learn and like look underneath the hood, so to speak.
Can I tell you, when I wrote Keto Clarity, I started writing it back in 2013. It came out 2014. I was struggling trying to find these experts. I'm going to try to name some you might still know. Dominique D'Agostino, he was around. Dr. Bill Davis, the wheat belly guy. Maria Emmerich, Ben Greenfield. I'm going down the list of people you might know. Dr. David Perlmutter, Dr. Thomas Seyfried, Terry Walls. The rest of them you probably don't know because they're not really active anymore. And then all these new voices that are out there now, I'm like, where the hell were you when I was writing Keto Clarity if you're such the expert today? Now, I get it. Some people found it in the years after I wrote my book, but it just tells you how transient this is. Let's hop on a trend. And some of the big names, I'm not going to say their names, but some of the big names in the keto space, they came along when they saw dollar signs that were going to be made. I hate to say that out loud, Lesya, but it's true.
It is true, and it's sad, but it's also just the way it works, right? It's capitalism. It's the way our world works. So,
and I'm not anti-capitalist. I think if you can make money from something and people are willing to part ways with their money, go for it. But be upright about who you were and not pretend like you were always keto.
Yeah, and that's where, again, it's having that relationship with the people, and people, they're not dumb, right? I feel like especially nowadays, people kind of can tell who's a fake, who's just out there to get your money, and who truly cares, and who's really providing value and cares about your health. And versus someone that is like we talked about, it's like, okay, if you're reading or if you're reading a blog post or listening to a podcast, and then in the end they're like, oh, and to do all of this, you need my supplement,
Right.
and you need to drink ketones, and you need to do this or that, like, then clearly all of that was just to sell you that, right? And so again, it's like, I feel like the authentic ones, they will stand out. They will persevere. You will know who's been around, who's been consistent, who's always putting out valuable content, who's done it themselves, is in the trenches sharing their journey, and who is not constantly just promoting crap down your throat.
Yeah, and we have names of people that just popped in our heads as you were saying that. So, and keep that to yourself, people. Don't tell us out loud. We all know. You don't have to say it.
We all know.
But like, I'm even seeing a move, and I think we talked about this when I was on your podcast, which again, guys, go check out the Fit Moms Squad podcast. Yours truly, the first male ever on the show. I was very honored you had me on for that purpose, and hopefully we provide a good value for your listeners. But I feel like we're at the point where a lot of people are running away from the keto label. I mean, BSB Tribe, I'm looking at your page, there's literally nothing on there about keto at all in your bio on your Instagram page. Is that by design?
Yes, that is. Because I don't want to, not that I don't want to be associated with keto, because keto did nothing wrong. Honestly, I feel like, what's keto got to do with this? Poor keto was like, I'm getting all this hate. I'm just a way of eating. I'm just a metabolic state. I think of keto over there, like crying in the corner, like, why does everybody hate me? Because that's the thing. It's this like association that we have now with keto. And I also don't believe in a one size fits all. So keto might work well for one of my clients, but for another client, it might make her feel like total crap and cause her to gain weight and cause her hormones to get disrupted and all that. So I don't like to associate and say that I only help women that do keto. Now, most of my audience are interested in keto because that's how I built up my audience over the year. But I don't want it to just be, I only do keto, and if you don't want to do keto, I can't help you.
Well, keto, the term has been co-opted to mean whatever the hell you want it to mean. So that's part of the problem. And you're mentioning the food companies earlier slapping keto and everything just to make a buck. I mean, literally almost all of that is just junk. When you go in any grocery store and you see keto, just turn on the back. It's going to say whole wheat. It's going to say grains. It's going to say sugars. It's got all kind of junk in it. And so when a term has been co-opted, plus we assume keto is just one thing. Paleo dealt with the same thing. It's paleo. And it's not, no, it's paleo across the spectrum. And keto the same way. It's a spectrum. I mean, I know pretty elite athletes that people like Zach Bitter that run marathons and ultra marathons in a world record pace. He's loading up on carbohydrate on race day, like 150, 200 grams of carbs. And then, of course, the ketones and the fats sustain him throughout the race. Is he keto? For him, yes. And then someone who's very, very insulin resistant and needs to keep carbs extremely low, maybe bump up protein a little bit and moderate the fat, that's the keto that's right for them. I feel like when we think it's a diet, that's where we fall off the rails.
Yeah, and I think that for me, and we talked about this, is like, there's different ways to do keto as far as fitting, which macro way do you want to do it? Like, do you want to have the higher fat, the lower protein, whatever the way, like carb loading, all that, carb cycling. But I think we can all agree that if we're going to just take keto and substitute the standard American diet to a keto standard American diet, where we're just going to take all of our normal junk foods that we used to eat, and now we're going to switch it over and just swap it out with keto junk foods, that's not really making a change in your health. Yeah. You're just switching from the regular junk food to the keto junk food. And yeah, sure, you might lose some weight in the beginning and water weight and all of that. And yeah, it's better on your blood sugar and your insulin, but then really, what are those ingredients doing to your body long term is the question. And again, I think it's also, if you ask a stranger on the street, what do you think of keto, or what is keto? I bet you 9 out of 10 will say, wasn't that diet where you just eat bacon and butter all day long? So it's that association, and it's like, whose fault is it that people have this? So is it our fault as the keto experts? Like, I don't ever say that. Where did they get this? Where keto just eating bacon and butter all day?
Well, there is a popular book called The Bacon and Butter Diet, and it's basically a ketogenic intro book, and it was very popular for many years. I was just like, oh, that's not the message we want to put out there. I mean, God bless the girl that wrote that book, but it became this mantra. And the same happened with Atkins when I came around and I started telling people I did the Atkins diet 17 years ago. People are like, oh, you ate meat, cheese, and butter. And I'm going, is that what you think the Atkins diet is? Really? Yeah, because the persona of it was such that people felt it that way. And let's be honest about something. We don't know a lot about what keto actually is. We assume a lot of things because you prick your finger, and Volek and Finney in their book, The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, wrote that it's between 0.5 and 3.0. But we don't know. That was their hypothesis based on their experiments. We don't really have a huge grasp of understanding of when you've been in ketosis and maybe you cycle in and out because your carb cycle, we're going to get to that in a second. Does it provide more benefit than if you stayed in a constant state of ketosis? We really don't know the answer to that. We don't know what happens to ketones over the period of time as the body gets more efficient at using them. Honestly, Lesya, when I test my ketones now, I very rarely show a high level of ketones, and I always show a lower level of blood sugar. Mm-hmm. Am I out of ketosis if I'm 0.4, have a blood sugar of 81, feel great, my brain's on fire, like I've got all the benefits of ketosis, but I'm supposedly not in ketosis? I just don't think we know enough to be verifiable about that kind of thing.
So I think it's confusing, and that all of that is very confusing, especially to beginners. So I'm glad you brought that up, because here's what I say. Yes, you're probably in ketosis. A newbie, 0.4, probably not. And so here's the problem. I see so many beginners, they're just like sharing their ketone numbers and their keto mojo. I'm in ketosis, and it's 0.2 or 0.3. No, like those, it won't even be 0.5. And I'm like, well, but that's not nutritional ketosis. Yes, it is. That person so-and-so told me that it's nutritional ketosis. I'm like, nutritional ketosis is 0.5 and above. However, once you get that adapted, you've done this for a long time, your body starts utilizing those ketones. They might not show up on the meter. So this is such a great point for beginners to know the difference between your ketone measurements when you start keto and when you get fat adapted. And also, you're right. How do we really know if that's truly ketosis? Besides the studies on epilepsy and all those things with children, there really is we don't have enough data to truly know, which is why we use those other markers of clarity and energy and, appetite decrease, all that stuff.
Or if you get a higher ketone level because you took an exogenous ketone or MCT oil or some other precursor to ketone production, rather than letting your stored body fat becoming those ketones. This is why I have a problem with EKs, why I have a problem even with dosing of MCT oil. You're not letting your body tap into stored body fat to produce the ketones. I don't know about you guys watching, listening right now, but I want my stored body fat to be released and turn that into ketones, if anything's going to be turned into ketones, rather than consuming things that will then show ketones on a meter. So I'm all happy and nothing's happening on the inside.
Oh my gosh, I can't even with the exogenous ketones. Okay, there's a purpose for them. If you're super athlete and, again, children with epilepsy, certain conditions, stuff like that, you need to be in that high therapeutic, cognitive. But here's the deal. You're right. There's the other spectrum, right, where it's low ketones, and then there's high ketones because you're adding ketones from externally. And yes, people, they drink those, and, of course, it's a whole MLM marketing thing, which I'm not against network marketing at all. But once it gets to the point where it's false information, that's when it bothers me. So drinking ketones is not the same as your body producing its own. You're going to drink them and then you're just going to, I call ketones expensive urine.